July 20th, 1969. Over 600 million people around the world gather around their televisions to witness the impossible. A man walking on the moon. Neil Armstrong's voice crackles through the static. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. The world celebrates. The Cold War turns a corner. America declares victory in the space race. But what if it never happened? What if the single most iconic achievement in human history wasn't a triumph of science and courage, but a carefully staged illusion? For decades, whispers of doubt have refused to fade. Skeptics believe the footage was faked, the astronauts never left Earth, and a vast government conspiracy has kept the truth hidden from the public. In this video, we're diving deep into the 6 most compelling reasons moon landing deniers believe the whole thing was a hoax. From suspicious shadows to missing stars, from deadly radiation to Stanley Kubrick himself, this is the conspiracy that just won't die. Whether you're a skeptic, a believer, or somewhere in between, stick around, because the truth may not be what you were taught in school. When the Apollo 11 astronauts planted the American flag on the moon, viewers noticed something odd. The flag seemed to ripple, as if blown by wind. But the moon has no atmosphere, no air or breeze to cause such motion. This led conspiracy theorists to claim the landing was staged, pointing to the flag's fluttering as proof of a studio fan or indoor draft. They argue the flag moved longer than expected, even after the astronauts let go, suggesting it was affected by air, something that shouldn't exist on the moon. But NASA explained the flag's behavior. It was specially designed with a horizontal bar to hold it out in the low-gravity environment. The astronauts couldn't fully extend this bar, leaving the flag wrinkled and giving it a rippled look. Physicists back NASA's explanation. In a vacuum, motion isn't quickly dampened, so the flag kept moving due to the inertia from planting it. What looks like waving is actually the flag reacting naturally in an airless environment. Still, the flag remains a favorite topic in moon hoax debates. Decades later, it symbolizes both the triumph of space travel and the enduring power of doubt. When we look up at the night sky, we see countless stars. But in Apollo mission photos, the sky is pitch black, completely devoid of stars. For moon landing skeptics, this is suspicious. Shouldn't space, especially from the moon, be filled with visible stars? To conspiracy theorists, the empty sky suggests the footage was staged under artificial lighting, where stars were simply forgotten or too hard to fake. NASA, however, explains the absence with camera settings. The moon's surface was brightly lit by the unfiltered sun. To properly expose the astronauts and the landscape, cameras used fast shutter speeds and low sensitivity, settings that can't capture faint starlight. It's the same reason stars don't appear in daytime photos on Earth. The astronauts weren't trying to photograph stars. Their cameras were aimed at equipment, the surface, and each other. But to skeptics, that explanation feels insufficient. If NASA had the technology to land on the moon, why not document the stars as well? They argue that including them would have required difficult special effects, easier to omit entirely. Despite later star-filled images from other space missions, the Apollo photos remain a focal point for conspiracy theories. To believers, the missing stars continue to cast a long shadow over humanity's greatest leap. On a sunny day, shadows all fall in the same direction because sunlight comes from a single source. But in Apollo moon landing photos, shadows often point in different directions, some long, some short, some sharply angled. To moon landing skeptics, this suggests artificial lighting, like what you'd find on a movie set. One famous example shows Buzz Aldrin brightly lit while standing in the shadow of the lunar module. Conspiracy theorists argue reflected light alone couldn't illuminate him that well, it must have been a spotlight. They also note rocks and equipment casting inconsistent shadows, fueling claims that the scenes were staged. NASA attributes these odd shadows to uneven terrain and camera perspective. The moon's surface is cratered and sloped, and wide-angle lenses can distort shadows. What seems like inconsistency is often just a trick of light and geometry. Still, skeptics point to strange reflections in astronauts' visors and shadows that don't look right as evidence of multiple light sources. They argue that lighting rigs used to simulate the sun accidentally revealed the truth. Despite scientific debunking, the lighting controversy persists. For conspiracy theorists, the odd shadows remain a visual clue suggesting the moon landing was more stagecraft than spaceflight. Encircling Earth are the Van Allen radiation belts, zones of high-energy particles trapped by our planet's magnetic field. Discovered in 1958, they pose a real danger to astronauts due to intense radiation. For moon landing skeptics, these belts represent a major flaw in NASA's story. In their view, the Apollo astronauts couldn't have passed through them in 1969 without deadly consequences. Conspiracy theorists argue the spacecraft lacked sufficient shielding and that even brief exposure could be harmful. They cite NASA's own warnings from the 1960s and suggest the mission was faked to avoid the risk altogether. NASA counters that Apollo missions took a carefully plotted course through the thinnest parts of the belts, minimizing time spent in high radiation zones, about an hour in total. The spacecraft's aluminum hull and limited exposure, they say, kept radiation doses within safe limits, comparable to a chest X-ray. Still, skeptics remain unconvinced. They question the reliability of 1960s shielding and dosimeters, and they highlight NASA's own statements in later years, acknowledging the difficulty of passing through the belts, suggesting the problem was never solved. To scientists, the belts were a manageable challenge. To conspiracy theorists, they remain a deadly barrier NASA couldn't and didn't overcome. The Van Allen belts continue to spark one of the moon hoax debate's most persistent technical arguments. Among moon landing conspiracy theories, few are as cinematic as the claim that director Stanley Kubrick helped fake it. The theory suggests that after the groundbreaking realism of his 1968 film 2001, A Space Odyssey, Kubrick was secretly recruited by NASA to film the Apollo landings on a sound stage. His pioneering visual effects and meticulous style, believers say, made him the perfect candidate for staging history's greatest illusion. The theory draws connections between Kubrick's work and supposed hidden messages, especially in The Shining. Conspiracists point to Danny's Apollo 11 sweater, the hexagonal carpet, and room 237, which they link to the moon's distance from Earth. To them, these weren't coincidences, but Kubrick's coded confession. Kubrick himself never addressed the rumor, and his widow has called it a monstrous lie. Still, the idea persists, amplified by viral hoax videos and internet lore. A fake deathbed confession video even fooled some into thinking the director had admitted to the hoax. Despite no concrete evidence, the Kubrick theory endures, fueled by Cold War intrigue, Hollywood mystery, and a director known for making fiction looks stunningly real. For skeptics, it's a perfect storm of genius, secrecy, and suspicion. It's a question even moon landing believers struggle with. If we went to the moon in 1969 using primitive technology, why haven't we returned in over 50 years? Despite massive technological advances, no human has walked on the moon since. 1972. For skeptics, this isn't a missed opportunity, it's a red flag. NASA explains the absence with budget cuts, declining public interest, and shifting political priorities. The Apollo missions were expensive, and after the space race was won, the US government redirected resources elsewhere. But conspiracy theorists aren't convinced. They argue that the moon landing was faked to outpace the Soviets, and once the illusion was accepted, NASA backed off to avoid exposure. Adding fuel to the theory is NASA's admission that it lost much of the original Apollo data, blueprints, telemetry, and video footage. Skeptics say this isn't an accident, but proof that the evidence never existed. While modern programs like NASA's Artemis and SpaceX aim to return to the moon, delays and setbacks persist. To believers, these are normal hurdles. To doubters, they reinforce the idea that the original feat was a fabrication. The decades-long silence, they argue, speaks volumes, and the simplest answer may be that we never went at all. 55 years later, the moon landing still captivates the world. To many, it's an inspiring symbol of human ingenuity and determination. To others, it's a tightly controlled illusion, an elaborate sleight of hand performed at the height of Cold War tensions. No matter where you stand, the fact that so many questions still exist is a story in itself. NASA insists we went, that the risks were real, the science was sound, and the legacy is undeniable. But the skeptics aren't backing down. They point to the missing stars, the dancing shadows, the radiation, and the decades-long silence. And they ask, could humanity really have achieved this with 1960s technology and then just stopped? In a world of misinformation, government secrets, and blurred lines between fiction and reality, it's no wonder that this theory endures. The moon landing conspiracy isn't just about outer space. It's about trust. It's about the stories we're told, the ones we choose to believe, and the ones we dare to question. So what do you think? Did humanity boldly go when no one had gone before? Or was the greatest leap for mankind taken on a soundstage, hidden in plain sight? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next, because the truth may be farther away than the moon itself.